So welcome to the uvwasi team meeting for November 11th, 2023. We'll follow our standard approach of going through the agenda items that were tagged for the agenda, which was in issue number 233. Before we get started, does anybody have any news that they'd like to share? Okay, if we have no news this week, I will go ahead and we can look at the first one on the agenda is the FD reader. I don't think anybody has had a chance to look at that yet, so I'm just going to say no update this week. The next one was what's new, so I don't think there's nothing new this week. My next plan is to look at the socket implementation. We did get a uvwasi update landed in Node. It did take a little bit more because there were new files and stuff, and there were some new files, so it required a change, but then it also required a new version of actually maybe that's not totally related. It was a different update of we needed to fix one of the UV, so maybe I'm going on a tangent, but we had to fix one of the uvwasi tests, which also then triggered I used a newer version of the SDK, which then required more changes in the test because like actually some parts of the uvwasi, the WASI SDK implementation for clocks seems to have removed some of the clocks, even though they were part of spec 1 at one point. And there's an issue I found, which maybe there are going to be some aliases added back in, so I had to comment those tests out. And so I think that one's just interesting in the sense of I did document what version of the SDK to use in the node test now, but it also does, I guess, say to me, like, even the spec isn't really non-experimental yet, right? Because like if we're pulling things in and out, and so it being experimental in Node is still quite appropriate, I think, just from or it makes me think it's still potentially the right thing if the spec itself can be happening like that and the tools are being used. So yeah, I was just gonna say my next functional thing is to look at the socket implementations, but we did get a new uvwasi landed in Node. And then the other thing on the agenda is just to talk about what's new in preview 2. So I don't know if anybody has anything on that front that's worth mentioning.
I can do my usual preview 2 update if it's useful, at least on the JavaScript side. So we're pushing ahead with basically getting the node.js implementation of preview 2 as an official WASI implementation at this point. So that's quite a big goal for the project. This is part of the jQuery project in general and the preview 2 shim implementation. So we are currently adding our work on that and getting more contributors to help with that process. If anyone's interested in working on the project, contributors are always welcome, but we are actually getting enough people to work on it now, which is really cool.
Can you just paste the link? I'll add it in the minutes.
Yeah, so this is the jQuery project, which is sort of a mono repo for the JS preview 2 and component model work. And the current main kind of issues are going to be tracing through the milestones for at the moment I'm finishing up the streams implementation. And all of this right now is just high-level code that's wrapping the Node.js core built-ins. So when you're using file system, it's just wrapping Node.js file descriptors, Node.js read and write functions. It's all the low-level calls. I'm then going to be, I'm currently working on HTTP, and then next is going to be sockets and browser support. So there's a lot to it, but things are moving, which is really nice now. And we're going to be porting the tests from WASM time to make sure that we're conformant with the full sort of test suite there. So it's going to be a lot of details working this through. it is high level wrapping of node.js functions. So, there's a bit more going on than ideally you'd want in a binding system. But I think for what we want right now, that'll get support across all versions of Node. And then the next step next year will be to look at how we load this stuff at a native layer and get the full kind of UV integration. I think we do have to tackle as well, like the API details as we do that, like having first class primitives for things like streams, things like all of the exact compatibility with how the preview tuples work, which, like on file system, for example, we don't have that exact compat right now, so we sort of have to work around it. So that having that as a secondary step after this will be beneficial. So for now, it will be just very much a project that's able to support everything in Node.js across all versions, so you can get any of these binaries running with the full interfaces and getting that to 100%. And so that's really the number one priority now for the next couple of months. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer any as well.
So I see there's like, and it's published to NPM, right? But it's not, is it something you require, or like I see there's this JCO transpile command?
Yeah, so it's just a dependency right now. And so it's an NPM dependency that sort of replaces what would be the core module. And then we should get to the core module ideally after that in the future.
Right, okay, so it is an NPM that you would like include in your project, and by including it, you can then use it to, access the Preview 2 APIs. Okay.
Yeah, so initially this was highly experimental. It was just kind of, good to kind of test out the workflows, but now it will be an actual complete implementation, which is really exciting.
Okay.
Yeah, and specifically the Preview 2 shim project is in the packages folder Preview 2 shim, and that's the actual implementation, which is going to be changing a lot over the next couple of months. Okay,
so I'll put the link to that in the minutes, and that's what's published as Bytecode Alliance /JCO
/ Preview 2 shim. That's the implementation layer. So, yeah, basically a polyfill at this point. Yeah.
Okay, because I was looking at Preview 2 shim. I was looking at NPM and it looks slightly different. Is it actually published yet?
Yeah, it is published on NPM.
Okay. So I'm looking to find the right. Oh, there we go. Okay, I don't know why I didn't find that. Okay, I'll put those two in the minutes. Sorry. Okay. Any other updates or things to mention on that front? I guess anything else we want to discuss this week, or
something that's probably worth discussing? I'm not sure if there's anything to talk about, but I have noticed that the team gets pinged on a bunch of stuff that's going on in Node. I think it's all around module, the module system and imports. Have you all seen this? I've just been ignoring stuff because I don't have opinions. But is there a reason that they're including us? Are we supposed to be looking at it? Is Colin looking at it? What is the purpose of that?
Do you have like an example? I'm just because basically we have a team. It's basically the team I can find is like we have a team says the team working on WASI, And it includes like everybody who's here and a few other people. And the teams, like people, I guess it's like if you're doing something related to WASI, the idea is that's the team to mention to see if people do have opinions as opposed to anybody else. So like, for example, Colin's not actually in that, I think he's probably removed himself from that group.
So, but to be clear, we're the WASI team, not the WASM team, right? Which is quite
Yeah, it says
it's a
WASI,
significant,
yes.
it's a significant difference. So a good example is, and Guy approved this because Guy is everywhere. But it's like this one, something about unflagging extensionless WASM imports.
Right.
And so that's specifically WASM, and that's the import system. So it has absolutely nothing to do with WASI, right?
Right. There's probably no WASM team, but yeah.
It does kind of affect, so like that would, for what it's worth, allow executing like top level binaries. So you could have like, well, extensionless binaries. So you could sort of have point node at a CLI app that's a WASM app, and it would be able to run it, even if it was extensionless, I guess, because it's now doing magic byte detection. So this was, I suppose that's the relation, that the fact that it now adds this magic byte detection in the extensionless, if it doesn't have any other file extension. It's very much an edge case. It is something that comes up for Node because currently, when we're supporting native modules, we don't currently support extensionless binaries, which is obviously an important use case for systems. But that was the major aspect of the fix, and this was another side edge case out of it. I mean, in a sense, we are kind of closely related to the WASM in Node at this point, I guess. But yeah, are you looking to try and refine our scope plane so that it's better to find what we're responsible for and what we aren't, or where our influence extends in the project and where it doesn't? Or...
So, well, specifically, I think so. It seems that Joffrey, who created this PR, is the one that's tagging us all the time. And I don't want to give anyone, like, I am literally just unsubscribing to resolve the notification, because I have no context. I have no time to get context. I don't have the time to participate there, right? And I would hate to give the impression to Joffrey or anyone else on that's contributing to Node or on Node Core or whatever, that they have eyes from WASM experts other than specifically just Guy, because he seems to chime in on them by tagging the uvwasi, the folks on this call, basically, right? Like the uvwasi team, because I'm guessing that most of us, maybe Guy excluded, most of us aren't going in and actually giving them a look. And so I don't want to give the full sense of, hey, we've had somebody that knows WASM look at this stuff, with the full context.
Do you think, like, I mean, yeah, we are in an interesting place with respect to like these groups at the moment. So to give some more context as well, we did previously have a dedicated modules team, and that was removed from the Node project. So now we just have loaders, and loaders is the team that's also responsible for modules as well at this point. So it's, I think the teams very much do exist around what are the active efforts in the project, and they don't tend to exist around like general areas of interest that people happen to be following. So they're less like subscription tags and more like actual teams. And so I think like, since that's the way that the project is working, maybe we just mention to Jeffrey explicitly and say, you know, this is the scope of what our team is working on. If you're looking for reviews, you can CC us, but we're not actually going to be necessarily involved in all aspects of WASing. But in terms of it being a tangential interest, personally, I used to subscribe to the Node.js firers and try to filter through everything. And nowadays, I just rely on WASI and loaders to follow the Node.js project. So I would rather be subscribed into more and then unsubscribe, as long as we're not giving the impression that we're endorsing things that we're copied in on. But I don't know that the project does assume that. I mean, Michael, what do you feel like the precedent is in that regard?
Sorry, say that again. I was a little distracted.
No problem. I was just saying, I was just mentioning that like the teams that we have usually represent the active groups that are active in the project, as opposed to just general areas of interest. And when groups are copied in, what, you know, are there generally assumptions that they are reviewing, or is, you know, is it more like a CC mechanism, or is it how much expectation is there that we're actually reviewing when we get copied in like that?
Guess it's hard to say. Like it's I think it's really meant to be the people who are interested in that area. That doesn't imply that they're going to, there's no commitment like by joining those teams that you're going to comment or provide advice or anything, right? It's more like I'm interested in being involved in the conversations, and if I have time, I may comment, is I think really the way that they are. So I don't think, you know, having been added to one of these, it doesn't commit you to do anything, right?
Right. I was scared that they would assume that it's had eyes from a WASM person or a WASI person, right? And by CCing node TSC or whatever it is, uvwasi, there's a likelihood that we're not looking at it, even to the point where I wouldn't even submit dissent because I don't have the context enough to, you know, to figure out what's happening. And again, my interest is uvwasi as a library, not necessarily as the thing that's only in Node.js, right? Because my beginning of my involvement was around getting this thing included into the micro runtime. So I'm not saying I'm not saying we should be removed from these threads or anything like that. I just don't want to give the impression that, hey, it's all good from the WASM folks because that nobody said yay or nay.
If you want to go into the specific issue as well, I mean, it's an interesting discussion topic. I don't know how much time we have, but I could certainly go into more context on this one if it is interesting. Sorry, I just gave like a super blitz kind of synopsis, but would that be worthwhile, or shall we rather just wrap this up from a process perspective?
I mean, I think like this one, if we're uncomfortable, we could just like mention to Jeffrey that, you know, by the way, we're not the right people to mention for this, right? Like, if you're looking for WASM expertise, that's a different group. So if we're uncomfortable on that front, we can possibly reduce the risk that Blaine's mentioning just by giving him a heads up.
That's possible too. I mean, to be fair, I am excited about importing WASM, you know, through assertions or whatever mechanism. I'm very excited about that. I just, you know, there's only so many minutes in a day.
Yep, no, understood. It's all it comes down to, we all feel like we have to do, you know, like I think you're just reflecting, we'd like to do more than we can, and that's just the way it is. So don't feel like because you didn't comment, you needed to. It's like we comment when we can, and you know, it's better to do that than have everybody say I can't do anything, right? And because there might be one in the future where like, I'm like this week, yeah, I'll think about it, comment, right? And like you said, guys already commented on this one and stuff. But like, yeah, if it makes people feel better, I could just, you know, ping Jeffrey through Slack and say, hey, by the way, mention the team a few times. You know, you're not necessarily getting WASM expertise there, just as an FYI.
Yeah, like I said, I don't want to discourage him from pinging people he thinks should be included. I just want to set expectations. That's all.
Okay. Anything else we should chat about or talk about this week? Okay, if not, we will talk to everybody later. Thanks. Bye.
Everybody.